Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. And remember, if you find yourself sitting on a comma in your life, you can also talk to me without a microphone. To explore coaching with me and getting off the comma in your own life, check out my information and book a call with me at offthecomma.com. And I'm also doing something different. I'm curating my own sponsor community, local businesses and professionals who I handpick and who align with our vision here. Be sure to check them out, learn more about them on my website and my YouTube channel. In the meantime, let's get into this week's conversation. And we're back again with another episode of Off the Comma and another powerful story to share this week from another powerful person just like us. And I'm so excited and so passionate about being able to bring these stories to the air, give people a chance to be able to share their experiences, and more importantly, give a lot of folks the chance to hear what experiences are like for other people so that they can kind of pull what resonates out of their stories. And also, just appreciate what other people go through in their lives, and also be able to kind of like see what it's like for us to just listen to each other without having an agenda. And so this week is no exception, as is the case with all of our weeks. And this week I have with us Rhonda Parker Taylor. And she is new to my circle. Rhonda and I haven't met before today, so I'm very much looking forward to learning about Rhonda, meeting Rhonda through her story, and learning a little bit more about her experience. So with that, I'm going to shut up now. Rhonda, I'm going to turn it over to you. Before we get started in your story, tell us, how would you like to be known? And then what would you like us to know about you?
Oh, wow. As you were sitting there talking, I was thinking about what I normally tell my clients. And that is your story of success. Let's figure out what that story is. So I was reflecting, okay, what is my story of success, and what would I want people to know me as? And I would want people to know me as a human being that is resilient, compassionate, and driven. And the reason why I say that is because everybody has successes and failures. And that's what I deal with daily in my consulting life, which is helping people pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and push themselves back off, out into the world, no matter what those circumstances have. Because people don't normally come to a coach or mentor or try to get assessed on things unless there was some reason for the change. And then as you were talking, I was thinking, well, why do you do that? Why is that what you want to be? And I was thinking there, well, wait a minute. It's because you've had to dust yourself off, get yourself up, and try it all over again. And I think that's the key to at least my story is, being resilient requires me to get myself up no matter what the circumstance. But being compassionate is also realizing that everybody else is in the same circumstances. That empathy is such a huge emotion to be able to provide self, because you should be empathetic to yourself, but you also should be empathetic to other people's emotions and needs. And then for me to be driven, I was born in the Midwest. You're known to be workers. Your work, you're defined by your work. So you have to be the best version of yourself. So I would have to say that I would want to, that would be what I would want to be known for and known as. And that is a human being, not just a human doing.
I so appreciate that. I mean, that is literally kind of why I always lead with the question that way, is so many times. And I'm kind of telling, like I was going to say, and it's not to knock the other ones, but I think sometimes maybe I am being a little bit knocky, but like so many times in our country, we describe ourselves by what we do and our jobs, and like all the identity is there, and we're so much more than that. So I just so appreciate what you were sharing about yourself, and especially this resilience piece and picking yourself up, very much in line with what we're talking about here with, sitting on a comma and getting off the comma. But there's one thing in particular that I really appreciated, because you were talking about compassionate and everybody goes through things. And it's like, even sometimes when we think, well, I'm not going through that, that doesn't apply to me. At some point it does, doesn't it? So compassionate doesn't have to be a case by case type of
No,
thing.
it's everybody thinks they're going through something and they're the only ones that go through it. When you're young and you're innocent and you really haven't experienced life, you kind of forget that there are problems out there in the world because you're oblivious to even your own problems. But as you get older and more seasoned, you realize that, life is about seasons, whether it be outdoors, the seasons, I live in a state that has 4 seasons, which means you're going to have warmth and you're going to have rain and you're going to have, snow, and you're going to have pretty leaves on one part of the year. And, then you're going to have green leaves, and then you're going to have no leaves. So everything is a season.
Mm-hmm.
As you go through life, it's about defining how you approach it.
Mm-hmm.
And I found for myself, and I love any of Daniel Goleman's books. I don't know if you've ever read any of the emotional books. I loved them when I was in college, and it's why I've defined myself basically on emotional intelligence in a lot of my work. And that's because it taught me, hey, you're not the brightest bulb in the bunch. You're not Einstein, but guess what? You can still be successful. You still can be happy. You still can do things. You still can make an impact in this world. And so many times, how many times do we hear, the voice, whether we did it to ourselves or whether maybe somebody else had a loose lips at some point and said, oh, you're nothing, or you're a failure, or you're not going to do it right, or you're not doing it right, or do it this way. And you end up internalizing that so much so that you don't have the resilience in you to face the next challenge. So for me, it's really about being aware that I can be my worst enemy just as though anybody else can.
I can already tell we're going to really enjoy hearing your story, because you definitely have the art of storytelling, right? So before we get into the 5 questions in a moment, I want to do something that I do with every guest, which is, Rhonda, as you think ahead to the next 40 or so minutes that we'll spend together, as you think about telling your story today, what's your intention for yourself in telling your story today?
For myself, I think for me, every time I tell my story, I'm hoping that I can give somebody out there the same strength that I had to find at different times in my life. I am very blessed, and I'm not a weeping willow or other, but all of us have something to contribute. And my contribution to others and to myself and into my storytelling is to learn the beauty within you. And if I can get everybody to learn the beauty within you and get rid of the negative voices and stay into the positivity that you can afford yourself. So many times we make all the excuses in the world to be miserable. And then rather than affording ourselves to say, I have a beautiful dinner I just made, or I have the most loving dog that comes and sees me, whatever brings you that joy. Instead of focusing on the joy, we have a tendency to pull out the negative and everything that we see. And that takes away the story of our success. And it also makes us wilt.
Yeah.
As a person.
So I hear you say, that you want to give someone strength and help them see the beauty in themselves. My intention for our conversation is obviously to support you in your intention, create a container for you to be able to share your story, but also that there will be someone or someone's out there who will hear your story and they will see a little bit of themselves in you and your story, which will make them feel a little bit more connected, a little less alone. And in the best of cases, as you've been saying, be inspired or feel empowered to do something that they've been wanting to do. So,
Exactly.
shared intentions today. Let's jump into your story, Rhonda. So, the first question of the 5 is, where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
Daily. And I say that with humor, but I would say the first comma I had was kindergarten.
Mm.
I flunked. You don't hear that often, but the teacher pulled my family in and said, she likes school, but she's not picking up the fundamentals. We think her maturity levels maybe not quite. And my birthday's in October, so it's kind of like I was at that cusp where do you start them this year or next year? And they held me back. And that first comma was then because it set the tone for my whole entire life. I became the caregiver of the younger kids that I now was a part of their group. And then I also became the one that the older kids that got pulled into the next term looked at like, why isn't she still with them? So I had to overcome the social differences that I had brought with me. And I think that's what brought me to a point that I wanted people to see the better part of them. Because if you ask anybody, I'm still friends with a lot of those people from kindergarten. I went to a very small school and there was only 50 in my graduating class. And so they would say, you've always been a caregiver. You've always tried to teach us things. So I would say that the first comma was then, but every day I make a choice. And that choice is, am I going to be happy today? Am I going to be productive today? Am I going to find the joy in the small things? And I choose to get off the comma because I've set into practice daily little things that bring the joy in, even if it's a rotten day, whatever I might be having to get through, whether it's a project that I can't stand that has a lot of statistics in it, or if it's a, something that I love to do. And some of those things are like when I get up, opening the blinds, looking outside, seeing nature, seeing what God has provided me in my own yard, in my home, and in my life. Then from there, I can go from each, and I try to do that from each room and each angle of my world before I even start. And I can do that with my coffee. I call it my perch, but it's a small brown chair that used to be my grandmother's that I've kept, and I can sit in the bay window and watch the, I call them critters. Other would be wildlife, the deer, the maybe the possum that's still out and it's just start turning dawn, or the raccoons or the foxes or the coyotes coming through, and I can see that what I feel about the world is still good. And my dad used to say to me all the time, you can tell the economy by the trucks on the road and what kind they are and how many they are. And I used to be a little smart mouthed. And I used to tell them, but you can tell somebody's world by how they treat the animals. And, it's true, though. It's our perspective in life.
It's interesting, right? Like father, like child, maybe it was different measures, but the art of observation, is similar. So, okay. And I'm sure you have probably a lot more to tell as well. But what I'm curious about, if I may, is So you've shared about how, being held back a grade in kindergarten, you said you became the caregiver to the younger kids that you were now in their class with. And us listening, we could make our own assumptions about your story. Yeah, I get it, and so forth. Tell us a little bit more. How did you come into the caregiver role? Like you said you did, but what was it that brought you into this kind of caregiver role that you've been describing, and why?
I loved people and I loved the other kids and I loved the differences. So if there was someone that maybe was being picked on, I was the negotiator to prevent them from the happening. Don't do that. That's not nice. The nicety stuff. If it was somebody that maybe didn't understand something in the social aspect, I was never going to be the straight A student, So did I become academically strong? Yes, because I was able to acquire a great mentor along the way that made sure I still went to college and I still got a doctorate and all these things. But what I cared about and what I still care about is that everybody felt valued in the room. So all the people that I dealt with from kindergarten to this day, I didn't care their background. I didn't care about what they knew, what they didn't know, who they knew, who they didn't know. I always wanted to detriment. Sometimes I would bring people into the circle, to make them feel comfortable. I can remember, a friend saying, I got really hurt when you didn't invite me to this party when I was young. And my parents said, you can only have so many. But there was a new person, and I wanted to make sure that new person was invited. And so I knew that we had kind of gone different directions, and she had her own group of friends at that time. So I invited the new person to make sure they were included. So I would say a lot of it, that caregiving role, came from that. And then my I would say also the nurturing of my matriarchal structure. My mom, my grandma, they were bakers. You came and got together at the table. So there was a certain amount of caregiving that you saw and nurtured from the women in my family.
Okay, so kind of in a different sort of way, like you were talking about how your dad modeled certain things for you. The women in your family sounds like they were very important to you, but also that they modeled certain things for you that you ended up adopting and kind of taking forward in your life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. I want to come back to the essence of the first question a little bit, and it might feel a little proby or like we're trying to get into the juicy parts or what have you. And if that's not the case, that's fine too. But the question was, where have you found yourself sitting on a comma or feeling stuck or whatever it is sitting on a comma means for you? You started by saying, well, in kindergarten, there was a situation, the story, and I was held back. And you said, well, I sit on commas daily, but this is kind of how I approach life. Tell us a little bit more about one of these commas, what it's like for you, what happened, like where have you found yourself stuck and what was it like for you?
Fear.
Okay.
I think, some of it, you might say self-acceptance, being unique, being different, facing my setbacks, some of them of my own doing, some of them of the world's doing, whether it be, I've had many losses in my family, and I've been blessed with a good support system, good family, and good relationships. But then with that comes the loss sometimes, whether it be the loss of my mother in 2004, September 19th, and September 19th, 2004. Let's say it correct. And to breast cancer and going through that with her, or whether it was in 2009, I lost my guardian adopted son to gunfire, that a person coming into to his workplace and shooting him and his friends that were working that evening. Whether it be the loss of my father, September 19th of 2020 to emphysema. We all have these moments that could put us in that comma state. It could be a professional setback, where you've worked on something and you got a rejection. Being an author, you get a rejection daily. Yay! Can I have you want to have a book signing this month? No. You get a lot of no's. So, and then there's things throughout every woman's life, especially, and the men go through it too, where there've been injustices. Period. So all of those are reasons that you can decide to sit on the couch and not face the world. But you choose to be successful and have a story of success. And that is where you get caught up and don't get caught up in either being triggered by life events that can make you angry, or you can stay disciplined to the thought that, no, nobody's derailing me today. And it can be just a bad phone call that can derail people. It doesn't have to be but find the lessons and practice self-care. Because when you do that, then you come out the victor, and you're off the comma and on to the next sentence.
I so appreciate your unique approach to the story. Every story on every episode is unique and different, which is why I love it, because it's the beauty of 5 simple questions, but how those questions can take us in completely different directions. And often people think about a particular story that's very meaningful for them, and then they share that. And we always, we get into the details and so forth, and then the remaining questions kind of unpack it for us. And sometimes folks will take us in a little bit of a different direction, which is also really cool. Like I had one guest who was like, well, I've had so many commas, I don't know if I can describe one. So we kind of talked about the commas collectively. What's really beautiful about what you're sharing with us is, like, even if I kind of ask for a drill down, your story is, and correct me where I'm wrong, anytime I reflect back, I could go into detail about the commas. We all have them, but I don't choose to put my emphasis on the comma. I put my emphasis on where I go from there.
It's the thriving, because the comma stops and gets your attention. Think about that. That's what the whole role of the comma is in a sentence. Stop, breathe, think, continue on. It's not intended for you to stop the sentence like a period.
So true.
So if I allow, and maybe it's the Midwest mentality, if you get thrown from a horse, you get back on it, but you really have to look at, what is your really intended purpose in life, period. And for me, I have to look at the fact that, what? I have diabetes. So my life might be shorter than other people. I have had strife in my life. And so that could cause, problems too. So if I don't have a mindful approach to continuing on to the end of the sentence, I might stay stuck and decide to stay in the bed the rest of my life, and not do it. So why don't I find strength in it to finish it off, and then sit down at the end of the day? And if it means that I have to say thank you for a miserable day at the end of the day, then I can thank, the higher power, or whatever you want to call it, God, that, hey, I had a positive relationship with me today.
I just feel like underlining that right there. Rhonda, let me ask the second question. We can kind of go back and forth here, but particularly since we're telling this story in kind of a different tone or a different tense today, the second question is, what did it create for you when you found yourself sitting on this comma? But I think I'd like to ask the question a little differently, since you're talking about your emphasis tends to be on, okay, where do I go after the comma? What's it like for you? And you can speak collectively. It doesn't have to be about a specific example, or it can be. When you first experience sitting on the comma, what does that create for you? Because you've already shared with us a little bit about, like, where do I go from there? But what's it like in the moment? And then just take us wherever you want to.
So sitting on the comma, first thing is I have to define, first of all, how serious is that comma? Sometimes in my life, I've had both. I've had, well, I need to rethink this strategy for developing my company or making more money or, even creating a whole new career, because once my son had passed, I had to really rethink things. Do I really want to? I was teaching at a college level. Do I want to deal with 20-year-olds every day that's the same age as what? So for me, it's identifying it, naming it, and then saying to myself, you will survive this. It will mean little later. One moment. I'm not talking about the death or a mistake you make in business. It will always mean something. But 3 days from now, what is that comma going to mean to me? And then when I can define it, I can realize if it's a severe comma, like one of the earth-shattering ones, like a death or an illness, something that changes your world, then I choose right then, this is not going to make me lose my mind. And by doing that, and I can remember when the police were at my house and they were telling me that he had been shot, I looked up and I saw when houses settle, they crack sometimes in the corner, a crack that I'd never seen before.
Wow.
And I followed it mentally all the way to the roof. And it was just very small because I'd never even noticed it. But to me, it was a long crack at that moment. And I said, it'll be okay. And then from there, one of my little strategies that I've told people, and someone told me about a Japanese phrase that says, put one foot, basically when the journey is shorter once you make the first step. Well, mine has always been a little bit more childlike. And that's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer's song, put one foot in front of the other. Then you'll be walking out the door. And I tell everybody that. Just keep walking. Put one foot in front of the other. Anytime I deal with a parent that's lost a child, or a person that's dealing with an illness, or any really strong detriment that they've caught up, they've got a comma that's right there with them. I say, don't avoid the grief, but still move forward. It's a comma. It's not intended to stop you from living. And same thing, reframe the problem and break it down. How are you going to survive this? How are you going to move on? If it's a mistake that you've made in business, okay, you didn't do the credit check. You got excited about the deal. You went ahead and, produced $3 million worth of product, and now they're not paying the bill. What are you going to do about that? Well, first, you're going to break down collections. 2, you're going to talk to your finance person and find out, hey, we need to do better on our background checks and our credit checks. And then you're going to start, using a lockbox. So, you start breaking down the decision to make yourself profitable again. But it's all those small actions that make a difference.
Yeah.
So you just do that. Just, make the actions actionable.
I also noticed too that it seems like, and you can correct me, if I'm wrong, but when you're presented with commas in your life, you tend to kind of go a little bit analytical too. I notice you describe these many different ways that you get intensely observational, right? Like you're looking at the situation, you're looking at your own reactions. In some extreme cases, like you described, your attention was even drawn to something completely unrelated with this really, really heavy situation that was on your doorstep, and then you notice the crack. And then you go into this kind of analytical sort of mode where you evaluate and explore options and really kind of turn over what's happening. And then start kind of like making choices and ranking and prioritizing, options, even if it's just beliefs and mindsets. So it seems like you get very studious with yourself when commas present themselves to you.
I think I can say that's probably because of my father.
Mm.
My father being in manufacturing, he taught us. My first job was bagging plastic feet, which is what goes on the bottom of aquarium stands so they don't scratch floors or get caught in the carpet.
Mm-hmm.
And I was probably 5 years old, and then bending steel and then doing the paint work. And he always taught us that everything is a system.
Mm.
And if you can learn the system, you can make it more successful, more profitable, more productive, whatever the goal is. So I still do the comma emotional.
Mm-hmm.
It's still there. I don't want to disregard the emotion because I do have a process that I put in place for myself. I can't say it would work for everybody else, but I use a model similar to the manufacturing approach that I do to addressing it and keeping me off the couch.
Mm-hmm.
And that is looking at the emotional state of myself and others, and start to, whether it be the caregiving role at that point, or for me, and at times I may be stopping by every type of mentorship I can find every moment of the day just to keep me from going back to the comma. Whether it be stopping at a church or a religious, organization of any sort and asking for prayer hands, mats to pray to, it didn't matter to me.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, as long as I get my soul rejuvenated and regenerated so I can keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I have that dump emotionally, then I know, and I'm self-aware that I must regulate everything else that's going on, because you still have to pay your bills.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to eat. You still have to do all the things that you're required to do as a responsible adult, or you fall off the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
So you it's very easy to avoid pain. You don't have the money to pay a bill, and so you put it in a junk drawer, and then you end up with 10 bills in the junk drawer, and then you end up going shopping. So it's very easy to come up with these bad habits that make you go back to the comma from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's giving myself grace to do what I need to do to be successful and have a story of success, and finding that in other people. I do that with my clients. I said, well, tell me your story, very similar to what you're doing in your podcast. And what's your story of success? And they say, well, I've not been successful.
Mm.
Then by the time you've gotten done with helping them format their resumes and looking through their life, and they look at it and like, that's me.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, then you get a joy. You see that they become prideful again.
Yeah. Well, jumping right in on that, because that's a perfect segue. In a way, you're talking about learning or relearning about yourself. Let's go to the third question, Rhonda. As you look back, kind of, I guess, collectively, since that's how we're approaching this, as you look back at the commas in your life, what have they taught you? The question is, what have you learned about yourself as a result of sitting on your commas?
That's I love that question. And I even going to approach it differently than I thought I was going to approach the question. Recently, I was watching television, and the Miss America University pageant was on. And I was looking at these young, beautiful, very good communicators, and answering questions. And I was looking at it and I was like, wow. What would I tell one of them? As an older woman that participated in these kind of events, played the piano, did all these events when I was younger. And when I looked at a picture that had just came out that I was going to use for my blogging, the blog hasn't come up yet, but you have the pictures ready and you have to that. There was this one very firm picture of my jaw and my eyes with my hair back. And I would say what they've taught me is I'm stronger than I ever thought I was. When I was younger, and people would say, why would you describe yourself like that? I was like the dog that if someone said boo, I would have piddled. Because I had this nervousness and anxiety that was internal. They asked me to read in front of the class. I would get so nervous and sick. I'd go to the nurse. And then I found out that if I put the thermometer in front of the heater, they'd send me home and I'd be home. I'd leave it. So I never had to face those fears. So I've learned by looking at that picture and that moment that we are built as humans to be strong. We sometimes choose not to be. And there have been times I've chosen not to be. And there's been times that, I may not have been as motivated or even maybe has made the right choices, made excuses to make the wrong choices, but I found that comma and learning to deal with that comma means that I'm admitting that I was born to be successful and strong. Sometimes that comma, to me at least, I can't say how everybody else will look at a comma. And I know when I was learning English, I never knew how to use the comma. It was like, I get confused. Is that supposed to be a comma? I would never put them in the right conjunctions. And, I had a problem learning where the comma was supposed to be. And by learning that the comma is not permanent, it's a pause, I was really able to learn to dismantle some of my own fears. It took a long time for me. I've written for years to publish my first novel. And my sister was saying, you have all these novels everywhere. Why aren't you publishing them? And I came up with every excuse in the world. Oh, I've got this client. I've got that. Dad needs me to do this. She said, no, you're afraid to. You're afraid to be vulnerable. And you know what? Doggone it, she was right. Sometimes you have to get off the comma and do what you're supposed to do. And sometimes that's even at night. It could be a small comma. It could be I'm sitting in my brown chair and I'm sitting there and I'd rather have a glass of wine or, and not do anything and veg out. And I'm like, oh, we are not ordering fast food today. We're not calling DoorDash. You like to cook, get in there and make dinner. It's more healthy for you and it's better for your wallet.
Yeah.
It could be, comments can be anything in life. Right for you.
I was just gonna say, it's interesting because like what just came up for me as you were talking about that is like, there's the commas that happen to us. And in a way, you're also describing like, I can also take a comma, right? Like you said, my natural flow would have been make the order, grab the glass of wine, sit down, but you took a comma to kind of challenge that first. So sometimes, you can choose the comma as well.
Yeah. Sometimes you can choose to get the wine, and sometimes it's best for your body to get up, make your food, move around, don't get caught up in the television or or the wildlife, and move your body because you've been sitting all day.
Yeah. Rhonda, let me jump into the fourth question here. So, and you may have already answered this to some degree, but I'd love to see what you add to it. The fourth question is, what has changed for you as a result of sitting on these commas?
What has changed for me is my confidence, my ability to talk about it and face the world. I think that, avoiding them could have been my first. Matter of fact, I used to tell people I was really good at negotiating when I could walk in the back door. the back door versus the front door approach. And I think that has a lot to do with the fear of the comma. When you have fear that you're going to get stuck in a rut, or it's going to alter your decision, or you're going to have to address something stressful or tensious, or you're going to have to get up off the couch and go cook. No matter what, how big or how small the comma is, sometimes, you have it. What I'm finding is I'm redefining self every day when I face that comma. I'm finding and embracing and rediscovering what my true intention and purpose is supposed to be in that moment. I become more in the moment by looking at the comma and saying, okay, is the sentence supposed to be active? Is it supposed to be passive? What is the best approach to ending this sentence, this day, this month, this year for me and those around me? So by navigating life's transitions, which a comma is a transition, then I can be more authentic to myself. I haven't done a puzzle in a while. Maybe it'd be better to, go down to the basement and pull a puzzle out and sit and think and look at the beauty of what that is. I have out in the barn in a while. What's out there in the barn? Do we have, so whatever it might be, it's becoming with grace my authentic self.
And again, I continue to see this theme reinforced in all of the different responses to the questions. Again, this studiousness, this self-assessment, and the ability to question, the ability to really kind of like explore both while you're in and coming off of commas.
Yeah. And I think that probably comes from my openness to the world. Even though life sometimes hurts us, I still love it. I still love people. I still love activities. I still love nature and everything it has to offer. Even when there's the pause, it makes you think, oh my goodness, is that, did something, did someone really say that? Or did something really happen like that? Or did that really happen to me? Or did I really see that? Whatever it might be, when you're on that comment, it allows you time to reflect and decide how that fits into your life. Sometimes I have a tendency, I don't know about you, to get involved in things that aren't even involving me. I get so up in somebody else's comment that I've forgotten that, wait a minute, that wasn't even your comment to be worried about. So start, evaluating how every day, and that's how I kind of stay motivated, is, does this fit into my purpose and my goal now? For me, does it fit into my authentic self? It doesn't mean don't help anybody, because I'm a helping person, but it does mean that I have to transition sometimes and think and seek outside of the box and realize sometimes those commas I can't take control of.
Rhonda, you've shared so much. This last question kind of gives you an opportunity to sum it up or even to open up something new, but it's a very simple question. What does getting off the comma look like for you?
Reframe the sentence to how I want it to end. Break it down. Seek out outside perspectives if I need to. And make that sentence end the way that's healthiest for me. And in taking those small actions, I can make it an achievable goal to be that either brings joy, happiness, or in some cases, there is no joy or happiness that can be bought by addressing the comma and getting off of it, but it at least provides me actionable steps to transition life.
I so appreciate you sharing that too, because this comes up a lot in the conversations. And obviously as a coach, this comes up a lot. Like sometimes the outcome of things will bring us happiness or joy or whatever the emotion might be. And sometimes the things that happen just kind of suck, right? Like there wasn't any oh, there was a silver lining, or, there's some good that comes of everything. I think it's ultimately what I'm hearing you say. And what I hear many people say is ultimately it's up to us what we can take from it versus what it inherently meant or was brought to us with, because most things really are just kind of neutral. We assign our own meaning. And if we can assign our own meaning, we can also assign our own kind of takeaways, is what I believe I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. And you can identify the belief systems that you want to come out of it, because you're right, not every one of them can end happy.
Mm-hmm.
But you can learn to minimize the negativity that it brings to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Physically, emotionally, spiritually, you can decide. You can seek inspiration and motivation. And, there's a lot of guidance in a lot of the religious books that you can pull out and realize that there's always a higher plan than what you have. So your goal is for you to handle your business and let everything else handle theirs. You can't fix every problem. You can't heal everybody. You can't, but you can do you. And you can be resilient, and you can be compassionate, and you can, be driven to make sure that your world and those around you is the very best that you can be. You say I'm reflective, and I agree with that. I do a workbook that I've been doing with my clients and myself since in my 20s, and takes 13 characteristics of your life, dimensions, and it breaks it down and has you do goals for them. But you really have to reflect on what you're presently doing in those dimensions and what you're not getting that you need. So whether it be emotionally or spiritually or physically, I'm not talking in the physical realm of dieting. I'm talking about, are you getting the water? Are you standing as much as you need to be healthy? Are you stretching? Are you, if you like blueberries, are you eating them? Like just the small actionable steps that make you healthier.
And these are generally prompts too, by the way, that you don't really have to think about. If you're thinking about it, then you're overthinking it, right? Like you generally know, yeah, no, I don't stretch enough. Nope, I haven't been eating my blueberries, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you don't acknowledge it.
Yeah. The acknowledgement, right?
Yeah, you have to acknowledge it.
Rhonda, we obviously could go so much farther with your story. And unfortunately, these podcasts, all have a time limit to them. But in the interest of, if people wanted to hear more, learn more about you, maybe even connect with you and talk with you further, tell us, where could people find you? I'll put it all in the show notes so people can click on the links. But what are some of your platforms, or what's the best way to get in touch?
So the platforms that I'm on are Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and TikTok. I do have a website. It's rhondaparkertaylor.com. All of the social medias are some form of rhondaparkertaylor.com, and they're all on my website. So I try to make it easy. I would love to, to be your coach at some point if you need to, or reach out if you're thinking about authoring a book and maybe want some advice on that. I'd be glad to provide that for you. And realize that, if it's meant to be, it's up to you. You can't wait for someone else. You got to do it for yourself. You have to be you.
Thank you for that. And then the last thing, there's one more thing that we do in every episode, because, obviously, as we've talked about, we believe in the power here of sharing stories from everyday people, and us being able to kind of connect through stories and pull our wisdom, or our self-reflections through other people's stories. But your story wouldn't be complete if we didn't give you an opportunity to also lift up other voices. So I call this section acknowledgements. And it's really, as you think about within your own circle of influence, who might you give a voice to, boost, lift up, give attention to? And that could be causes, organizations, other creators, people in your family and life. Who would you like to acknowledge today as part of your story?
I have two accountability partners that I use continually. That would be my husband, Dana, and my sister, Brenda. There is no social link for those that you have to recall, but they are the ones that, and I tell everybody they need to have an accountability department that call me on the carpet when I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing for self and for others. I would also say part of my foundation itself to the core is my family-owned business, which is nobleindustries.com. It's a manufacturing company, but it really shows the power of innovation when you want to. My dad was a high school dropout. He started in a barn, and now it's a mid-sized manufacturing company in the Midwest. And my brother and my sister both, run it together, and they show daily of what the importance of work and providing the opportunity of employment for people is. And then as far as for writing and mentoring, I would say J.J. Hibbert and Merrill Hemingway, they both helped me with my novel and helped me get it out there from Mindster Media. And I would say, anybody that has any questions about what route they might want to go, because it can be very confusing, I would highly recommend that they talk to them about that, because they are the experts. And sometimes you need an expert. Sometimes you don't. You can do it on your own, especially if you have the time to do it. But in my case, with my consulting and stuff, it was very important to my success.
Rhonda, thank you so much. We are so grateful for you to come on here and share your story with us today and share from your experience. It's always so valuable, and I just enjoyed the conversation. And I will definitely look forward to connecting with you more. And I just wish you the best of weeks ahead.
I wish you that too. And thank you for bringing this wonderful podcast and really making me reflect. You here again, and that's one thing I love about podcasts is you do get to reflect, and I will think about the comments for the rest of the week. And okay, why am I on a comma right now? And I will definitely finish the sentence thinking about the podcast. And all of you out there that are listening that aren't following, you should follow and share, because this was very enlightening and reflective.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rhonda. We'll have a wonderful week ahead.
You too.
What an honor it is for me to witness these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way too. Think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. Surprises can reveal themselves to you when you do this. And if you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. Let's spread the word. Let's continue to build connection. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast here on this platform and social media at Off the Comma, and feel free to comment and interact with these posts and episodes. Check out my website for workshops, events, and my sponsor community. I'm covering the costs of production by curating my own sponsors who align with our vision. Be sure to check them out. They're all powerful people and businesses. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.